This week's episode of Blowing Smoke with Twisted Rico is brought to you by Baby Loves Tacos and its two locations in the Pittsburgh area. The main locale over in Bloomfield and their newest location in Millvale, right over the 40th Street Bridge. Zach, Kat, Kaz, John, Ben, and the rest of those groovy cats serve up the best Mexican-style food this side of the Rio Grande. Whether it's their huge burritos, tasty bowls, or the finest tacos around, Baby Loves Tacos will fill you up and make you smile. So when in Pittsburgh, do as the Yinzers do and head over to Baby Loves Tacos and tell them Twisted Rico sent you. Baby Loves Tacos, where everybody eats. This week on Blowing Smoke with Twisted Rico, we will be joined by Lee Harrington, bass player of Boston's legendary rock and roll institution, The Neighborhoods. To get things started, here's a classic penned by Mr. Harrington himself. This is Tommy from the Reptile Men album.
He was just a bum. Well, that's what my mom would call him. But he was my friend in some peculiar way.
Welcome to Blowing Smoke with Twisted Rico. I'm your host, Steve Ricardo, and this week we're joined by one of Boston's all-time great rockers, Mr. Lee Harrington, bassist of the legendary Neighborhoods and the man whose voice you heard on such classics as Nancy, Love Holiday, Wailing Wall, The Pipe, and the song you just heard, Tommy, from the Reptile Men album, released in 1987 on Emergo Roadrunner Records. Let's welcome Lee Harrington to the Blowing Smoke with Twisted Rico podcast. Lee, it's an honor and a pleasure.
It's absolutely my pleasure to be here. See you again, brother. It's been a while.
Now, was Tommy a bum that hung around at Blanchard's in Austin? Do I have this right?
That you done your research, Steve. That's exactly right. Yeah, we the glamorous lifestyle of the rock stars. At some point when you're not touring, it's like, how am I going to pay my phone bill? And somehow the entire band, worked at Blanchard's.
No way, you guys worked there.
Oh yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, like Mike started there, and then we got paid under the table. We got paid in beer. We probably worked there for 6 months or something. But there were these two guys that hung around the parking lot all the time, and one of them was named Tommy. And there was a point where we didn't see him for a while, and the rumor on the street was, Tommy didn't survive the winter, didn't make it. It turned out that he was somewhere else, and we eventually saw him again. But in the interim, I took the inspiration to write a song.
Did you live in Allston, Rock City at that time?
Yeah, I lived in Allston for 15, 20 years. Yeah, like tiny little studio apartment on St. Luke's Road. Yeah, and I wrote that song in that apartment. I remember writing it. I remember
the first time I got the demos, believe it or not. I have all of those. It's great. It's been a while since I saw you. I think the last time I saw you was when the Hoods did the benefit at the Somerville Theater, along with Mission of Burma, which is one of those like great moments in Boston rock history, like 2,000 people in a theater, Neighborhoods, Mission of Burma.
I'll tell you, Steve, that of all the experiences I had playing in the band, and for sort of life experiences in general, that night for me was one of the highlights of my life. I love Mission of Burma. I think they're amazing. And also just great guys. And it was just sort of a rare opportunity for us to play together. I think they'd played together before I was in the Hoods, but I don't think we'd ever played together. So we were just completely excited. I was so excited.
And it was a good cause, too, because it was for a homeless shelter.
And I just have to say one thing, because they have a song, Einstein's Day.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Verses. I heard you talk to Rick Hart about Mission of Burma and Verses in particular. I think to me, it's one of my top 10 albums of all time. I just think it's brilliant.
I would agree with that.
And Einstein's Day, to me, I put it up there with like Waterloo Sunset or Changes as just like a perfect song.
Wow.
And so
that's a compliment.
Before the gig, I was like, Roger, you got to play Einstein's Day. And he's like, well, okay. And so halfway through the set, they started to play it. And I think at that point, I might have been sitting out front or standing down by the front of the stage. And I couldn't stop myself. I jumped up on stage. I never done it, although
I remember.
I jumped up on stage, and Roger looked at me like, oh, no. But,
You guys jumped on stage at the end of the set, too. Didn't you guys do a Stooges?
Yeah, we did, yeah.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, I think those guys are genius.
A song that you guys covered, That's How I Escaped My Certain Fate, is my favorite Mission of Burma song.
It's brilliant.
I'm not going to, of course, we all love Academy Fight Song and Revolver and all those. So I've been asking everyone this lately, so I have to ask you, how have you been dealing with everything that is 2020? Did you what did you do to get, what have you done? Now it's not over,
right?
But we went through a really rough patch there. And we're probably headed for another.
Yeah, I suspect you're right. I think I probably managed it the way most people did. I put my head down, took care of my family, and tried to be safe and keep myself in a bubble to the extent that I could. And then I think as the summer came and the weather got warmer and people started to get a little antsy and maybe confident, I was out a little bit more. But there's no place to go.
Right.
I think 90% of my social life still is going to see bands play at local clubs. Do
you live in the city?
I live in Needham.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
Beautiful
I know Needham.
Yeah.
I know. I make fun of Needham all the time. I don't know if you ever heard me. I called it the whitest town in Massachusetts once on a previous podcast.
Yeah, I have to tell you that ending up there was sort of a shock to the system. It's like, why did I end up here? But It has a yard and a driveway.
I would live there if I could find an apartment
Yeah.
there. It's a nice little downtown area. I like that.
It's got its
Allie
its,
Reisman's from
She sure is, yeah. So
famous gymnast.
So we just we keep your head down and try and be smart but it's been a challenge, but not as big a challenge to me as it has been for lots of other folks. I would imagine.
Now I know I did, and I'm thinking you did. Did you utilize your music collection a lot during the pandemic? Like, do you have a go-to that you went to, like records that you knew would help you through these times?
I don't. I'd have to think of whether or not I focused on anything in particular, but I'm like any guy of my vintage. There are certain records that I've listened to since I was 12.
You already mentioned the Kinks and Bowie.
Right. So
we're going to talk about Bowie later.
Right.
Too.
So when I go back to that sort of genre of music or that sort of collection, those are the things that those are my musical anchors. They always have been. I can put on Who's Next and listen to it anytime. I could put on Ziggy Stardust and listen to it anytime.
Classic rock.
I could put on Verses and listen to it, and I do. I find myself just putting on these things and driving, and it's good. It's good for the soul.
Yeah, I mean, I turned to music a lot during rough times.
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to go all the way back here now
Okay.
to like 1982, 83, when you joined Dave Minahan and Mike Quagley and became a member of the Hoods. I don't even know if I know how the whole thing transpired. So if you could tell our listeners, I think you were about their third or fourth bass player, maybe?
I was 4 because the original bass player was Jimmy Bowman, who was like a sort of school friend from the Upton, Mendon area. Then John Hartcorn, obviously, during the sort of heyday. Then Tim Green during Dave's Gang of Four funk era.
Right.
And then me. And they've tried to get me replaced, but I won't let them. But I think...
So that's like 37 years.
It's crazy. Wow. It's really crazy. Yeah, when you talk about a record coming out in 87, I think that's, 10 or 15 years ago? I was like, nope.
It doesn't feel that long ago to me.
So I had been a fan. I remember hearing them on, COZ or whatever the stations were that played local music on Sunday nights and thinking like the neighborhoods, these guys are probably like a bunch of swarthy Italian guys from Eastie or something. I didn't know. And I went and saw them at the Channel, which was then the Mad Hatter, on a Sunday afternoon. It was like a local band extravaganza. They weren't even on the big stage. I walked around the corner and saw this guy, this presence, playing Flavors and Prettiest Girl and She's So Good, and I'd never seen anything like it.
Was Hartcorn in the band at that point?
I think John, it may have been the tail end of the Jimmy Bowman era, but or John may have just
that
started.
early?
It was
Okay.
early. And Dave, you've seen
Yeah,
Dave.
yeah.
I mean, he's a life force.
Madman.
He's just, a rock star. Like he just emanates that quality.
I was thinking if he did a performance during COVID with the spit and the sweat flying all over the place,
He'd be
the whole
super
room
spreader.
would be infected.
Yeah, he's a single person super spreader. But I'd gone to tons of concerts at the Garden and the Orpheum and all these places, but didn't have that much experience seeing a band like that raw, that new, that was ours. Like on a tiny little stage, it was life changing, and became a huge fan. Saw them hundreds of times. Then started playing in some baby bands myself in town, and we would open for the Hoods, and Dave and I became friends. We clearly had a very deep shared musical experience. And
what were some of those bands?
Well, we loved Bowie. We loved Martha.
No, I mean the band that you were playing in that opened for the Hoods.
I was in a band called the Paytons.
Oh, yeah, okay.
We were like a very mod, kind of all wore ties and jackets and tight red corduroy pants and Beatle
Was
boots.
Salem 66 on any of those bills for you guys?
No,
too?
because I think I might have just started playing with the Hoods when Salem 66 formed.
Right.
It was around that, like 82. But I certainly remember going to see those guys and thinking they were amazing and very attractive.
Wait a second. Did you go out with one of the girls in Salem 66 back then? I know Dave married one.
You
did?
I dated and married
You did?
Beth Kaplan, yeah.
And you're still married?
No.
Oops. Sorry, Mrs.
No,
Harrington.
this is fine. This is,
Beth, that's right. I'm sorry I don't remember that because I didn't, but yeah.
Oh, yeah, because that was after sort of, we had worked together. But, yeah, we did it for a while. We get married. We're still good friends. It's good. It's really, she's an amazing person, so.
So when did you guys decide that you had to play together?
I think after Dave and Mike had played with Tim for a while, and I don't know the story of the sort of de-evolution of that. I will also say that there were a couple of times I played with the Hoods. I played rhythm guitar at a few shows because Dave was always toying with the idea of adding another guitar player. So I played rhythm guitar at a few shows and a couple of songs when John was still in the band. So I think Dave,
I didn't know that.
I think Dave and I always had some underlying sense that we would somehow work together. But I always said, Dave, you don't need another guitar player. Like the magic of the band is seeing a 3-piece band make that much music and have that much energy. So when Tim left, Dave was like, hey, do you want to come down and maybe, I don't think he said audition. I don't think he would have said that, but do you want to come down and play? So I went to the basement in the house in Upton where Dave lived for...
Upton. Every episode, Upton comes up.
And, we started to play. And although I thought that this stuff they did with Tim Green, there's some great music in that period of Dave's writing, Electricity and songs like that. I was kind of like, Dave, why don't we play Real Stories and, Mr. Reeves? And Mike was very much on board with that because Mike really wanted to rock.
He did a lot of background vocals on Mr. Reeves especially.
Great singer. And so I think by sort of subtle force of will, sort of drove us back a little bit more in that direction. And David also written some new songs. And it was never really like, hey, you got the gig. It was just sort of like, well, why don't you come down Thursday and we'll play? And then, hey, we got a show at the Blue Wall at UMass. Let's do it. And
you're a neighborhood.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Just for the listeners out there, I just want to give them a little history here. So, Prettiest Girl, No Place Like Home, everyone knows. It came out on Ace of Hearts, 79. It sold 10,000 copies. Things didn't quite explode for the band like some people thought it would. But the perseverance, one of my favorite words when it comes to successful rock bands, took over. And from that point on, you recorded The Fire Is Coming on Mustang Records in 84. In 86, The High Hard One on Restless Enigma. 87, Reptile Men, Emergo Roadrunner. 90, Hoodwinked, Emergo Roadrunner. 91, self-titled with 2 re-recorded tracks, Pure and Easy and Prettiest Girl. And then all the way to 2010, The Last Rat on Ram Van Records. I still don't know what the hell that label is. And then last year, Last Known Address. Now, I have all those records, and I'm sure a lot of Neighborhoods fans have them. I just want to go back to the High Hard One because that's when I got involved with you guys.
Yeah.
And I remember when I went to work at Enigma, it wasn't until after I got Poison that they kind of said, okay, you can sign whoever you want. And I signed the Outlets and the Neighborhoods pretty much simultaneously because those were 2 bands. I was like,
great band.
I got to get these bands on. What, during that time when you guys got signed, did all of a sudden you think, okay, now we finally have the opportunity we've been waiting for and we're going to go on the road and we're going to go full on? I mean, what do you remember about that?
I think that we definitely saw it as a pathway forward. I don't think we were ever, I don't think we ever thought, oh, this is it. Now we're going to make it. But I think, in all candor, I think we spent a little bit of time in 82 and 83 and 84 kind of reclaiming some territory that maybe had sort of been lost to the band before I joined the band, and sort of finding our voice again, and Dave finding his voice as a songwriter again. So I think we thought, this is great. We're going to make a record. Our friend Wally Arsenal, who has basically bankrolled us for the past 30 years, helped us get that done. And,
Vic recorded
Vic Steffens, who I, to this day, still don't remember how we connected up with Vic, but he was a great guy.
He was the person I had to track down to get the band, by the way.
Oh, really?
At that time, yeah. And then he said, well, why don't you talk to Mike? And he gave me Mike's phone number.
Yeah, Mike. Mike was the manager.
I had seen the Hoods many times. I was at the Cape Cod show that every time I bring it up, Dave doesn't want to talk about it. But I was at that show. That's how far back I go with the band. And then I saw him numerous times. Yeah. First time I saw you with the band was at Sir Morgan's Cove in Worcester.
Yeah.
But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. So I think we were like, okay, this is at least we have a concrete reason to play gigs. And then when we hooked up with you guys, we've had a national platform because the Fire Is Coming we put it out ourselves. It might have been in Newbury Comics, but we didn't have any distribution really. So I think we saw that as our first opportunity to tour because to my amazement, the band had never really toured. They played New York. I think they might have played DC, but I used to think like, really, you guys should be.
I know, huh?
You should be playing Europe. You should be huge. You should, but. So I think we were excited for the fact that we had a chance to now get a booking agent and play some shows in other parts of the country. And
even though that record didn't explode, the one thing I remember is it was a top 20 college radio record. So that really opened a lot of doors for the band.
It was amazing to me to see the effect of that because I think, remembering back to the industry at that time, it was still very sort of cottage industry. Guys like you were out there like pounding doors and making phone calls, and bands were getting in vans and driving to clubs and loading in and playing shows, but it wasn't as organized as it became, and we certainly didn't have the social media platforms to sort of promote and do these things.
Didn't even have a cell phone.
But it was astonishing to pull into Columbia, South Carolina and have a bunch of people who had heard it because the college radio station played it, or upstate New York, or we played gigs in Pittsburgh. And, it was just, it really was a very powerful, organic underground movement.
One of my highlights from the High Hard one was when you guys played Club Lingerie in L.A. I have the tape. I think I gave you a copy.
I think I do have a copy of that, yeah.
You're the only one I ever gave a copy to.
Of course, I'm the only reliable one, Steve.
And it was such a great show, and it wasn't a huge crowd, probably maybe 100, but the people there were like...
Yeah.
And Michael Whitaker, who passed away recently, we ended up working together at A&M years later. He was... I think he was doing sound that night there. He wasn't doing sound. He was hanging out because Dave dedicated a song to him. But the thing I remember the most about that show was the encore when you guys did Bloodstains. And Ralph Quaglia came on stage.
Yeah. Yeah.
That had to be a great, playing in Hollywood like that. That was your first time, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it might have been my first time in L.A., that was very exciting. And also, I think in the moment, and certainly in retrospect, an amazing thing to share with friends like that, with you, with Dave, with Mike and Ralph and Ty. Like, it's just like, it was great. It was like, really, this is us, man. We're doing this right now. It was really exciting.
Club Lingerie was a legendary room, too, which is gone like all the other good clubs. Yeah. There was something else I wanted to mention that's kind of funny.
Okay.
But I don't hope I'm not wrong about this, but I think I'm right. If I'm not mistaken, I believe I played the part of Lee Harrington in the 1991 film Hard Promises when I was the bass player in Dave Barton's band. And we rocked out to the Nick Lowe classic, I Knew the Bride When She Used to Rock and Roll. I think I managed to fill your shoes well on the big screen.
I remember that now. That's pretty funny.
You played bass on that, right? And I didn't even know how to play bass. And Dave taught me how to play bass when we were in Austin, Texas. And I pulled it off somehow. But
that's funny.
I thought I had to bring that up because I thought that was hilarious. But going back to after the High Hard one, I know the Emergo experience was a kind of a up and down one, so we don't have to really get into the details. But you guys opened for David Bowie at Foxborough.
Yeah, at Sullivan Stadium, the old stadium.
I mean, I don't know if you ever talked about it in an interview, but just tell us about that experience. I wasn't there, unfortunately, but I heard it was something.
I was wondering that tonight. I was like, was Steve there that night? What a shame.
I was not.
Yeah. Whatever the experience was like in that period of time with the label, the one thing that came of that is that there was a Musician Magazine article.
I remember that. Bill Flanagan.
And someone said to Bowie, I guess it was Flanagan, said like, so what are you listening to? And he mentioned our name. And you have to imagine, Steve, a 12-year-old kid sitting in his sister's bedroom listening to Hunky Dory and Ziggy Stardust and then, Diamond Dogs. And it just, Bowie was, for me, the biggest thing. Like without question, my favorite artist. So that alone was like, oh my God, like David Bowie has listened to a record that I played on. And then, you guys helped. It was a team effort to say like, how can we leverage this? How can we like get on a show, or at least get tickets to a show? I think would have been enough for us. So the opportunity to play that night, my parents were there, my family was there, to walk out on a stage where I had seen countless football games and concerts myself, and to play in front of tens of thousands of people. I literally remember vividly feeling like my feet were not touching the stage. It was crazy. It was absolutely crazy.
It seemed to me that was going to be a launching pad for the band, but it kind of took a little while longer after that. It was soon after that I unfortunately got fired. I've told this story on the show many times. I got fired from Roadrunner because I put the Reptile Men record into production, and he told me, we can't do the gatefold, it's too expensive. And I couldn't go back to the band. I believe your sister designed the cover.
She did, yeah.
And I said, I don't care, I'm doing it. The good thing about it is he fired me, but gave me a couple months to like help get the record out and everything. But I felt bad. That, unfortunately, was the end of my relationship with Mike Quaglia. He kind of didn't take that very well because, and I understand it, because when I left Enigma and I went there, Enigma wanted to re-sign the band, and you guys chose to come with me.
Yeah.
And, so I understand Mike's, this is rock and roll though, man. Things happen, and, business is the worst part of the whole music.
Yeah.
World.
Absolutely. And I think it's always a very difficult balancing act, because we all start out writing songs in our bedrooms and maybe getting to get together with friends in a basement or a garage to try and figure out how to make them songs. And then maybe someone gets enough money to record them. But no one, at least no one that I know, and certainly no one back in the day, was thinking like, all right, what's our marketing strategy? What's our business plan? It was just like, we were just a bunch of kids in a van driving around playing shows. And you were as much a friend of ours as a business relationship. And so we're all just sort of flying by the seat of our pants, trying to figure out how to, make a few bucks so that we could do this and not work at liquor stores, or paint houses. So
good. Something really good did come out of that, though, because you guys stuck with them, and Brad Whitford got involved with you guys. How did that all happen? I know, but why don't you let our listeners know about it, because that was a good thing.
Well, that's another one of those things where, talk about Bowie and the people that we've been fortunate enough to work with and play with. You have to imagine a 12-year-old kid in Braintree listening to Dream On and SOS Too Bad and Walk This Way, and thinking like, those people existed.
She's the woman of the world, and God,
absolutely,
she knows
Lord
it.
of the Thighs. And those people existed as a picture on the album cover, maybe a picture in a story in Cream magazine, and then you got your $5 tickets to go see him play at the Garden. Never in a million years did I think I'd be in the same room with Brad Whitford or Steven Tyler or Joe or Tom or Joe. It's the stuff of dreams when you're staring in a mirror with a brush singing along to an Aerosmith record. So I think that Dave and Mike somehow connected with Brad, and I don't remember.
Through David Robertson,
Through
maybe?
David Robertson.
Yeah. Who was working with Aerosmith
correct.
at the time,
He
and
worked
eventually
with Collins
became
Management.
your manager.
Right. And, Brad expressed an interest in maybe producing some music for us. And it was crazy.
I'd say arguably the best record is Hoodwinked. Well, it ended up becoming The Neighborhood, self-titled, but those recordings, phenomenal.
Yeah, I think the band was in pretty good form. Brad was an amazing influence, not only from the production side with ideas and sort of inspiration, but just the fact that he gave a shit about us. It was really motivating and really uplifting. And also, he's just the sweetest guy. When you meet your heroes and they're really nice guys, it's it's really a blessing. And yeah, I think that one's good. We'll talk about the last record that we did recently, which I think captures us more, because I think we're at our best, obviously, when we're live. And that's always been the knock on the band. It's like they've never captured that magic in the studio, and that is a difficult thing for anybody to do, I think. But I think that Hoodwink record, the songs are great, the attitude was great, the artwork's great. I mean, I just think it's a really good record. I'm proud of that record. Yeah.
You know, when I met, because of David Robertson, he invited me and my ex-girlfriend Terry, rest in peace, to the Love in an Elevator video shoot.
Oh, wow.
And I'll never forget, I met the whole band. We hung out with the whole band. Joe Perry spent a long time hitting on my girlfriend, which was fine with me. But the best thing for me was when David goes, this is Steve Ricardo, and Brad Whitford goes, I heard of you. That's what he said, I heard of you. And I was like, well, that's great, man. You know, it's like... And that was good for me, too, because I got to see Aerosmith. I already had seen him a lot, but then David hooked me up with all these. Yeah. I saw that. I was at the Skid Row show with the bottle throwing incident in Springfield.
God. Yeah.
So, then we worked together again at Third Stone Atlantic, and it really seemed like that was going to be it. And then another magical moment happened, which should have put you over the top. You got Bowie coming back into the picture again.
Yeah.
So how did that come together, and what was it like touring with Tin Machine?
We had sort of kept in touch to some degree, and then the Tin Machine band had two Boston guys in the band, Reeves Gabrell and Eric Schrimmerhorn. And so when they were sort of setting out their tour dates, we reached out and just said, look, you know, and we worked with
Take us with you.
Yeah, and we worked with you guys, and we were like, look, can you underwrite some of this tour? And the label was kind enough to sort of give us enough money to keep us on the road for a couple of months. And it was, you know, just magical time. It was an amazing time.
I was at the LA show, and I got to meet Bowie for a split second, and I was like, I mean, the only person I ever got that excited about was Brian May when I met him. It's like you meet certain people, and you're like, David Bowie.
Oh, yeah. Because we had met him backstage at Sullivan Stadium, and that band had Carlos Alomar and Peter Frampton, and just meeting all these guys, it was amazing. But to meet Bowie at backstage that first time in '87 was, sure.
Wow, I didn't realize Frampton. I thought it was Earl Slick at that time. It was Frampton.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so the Tin Machine, that couple of months in a row with those guys was great, because we got to spend time with David Bowie. He was not a guy who sat on the tour bus, walked out on stage, and got back on the tour bus. He was there for sound check. He hung out. We talked. We were with those guys in Hartford, Connecticut, at a gig the day that Freddie Mercury died.
Ooh.
So that was the talk of the band members at sound check, and Bowie was sitting there in the middle of the circle just telling us stories about Freddie, and it was just like, it's one of these things you can't believe you're sort of sitting here having this conversation with this guy. And I'll tell you the best thing, which we've told you about, but we played 2 nights in San Diego on that tour. It was near the end of the tour. I think that was the last week or so of the tour. And after the first night, we said to Reeves and to Eric and some of the guys in the crew who we had become friends with, that we were going to go to Tijuana the next day and just see Tijuana, hang out in Tijuana. Next day, we get down to the lobby of the hotel to meet some of these guys, and there's Bowie sitting in a chair in the lobby reading a book. We were like, hey, David, we're just we're meeting some of the guys. We're going to go to Tijuana. He's like, I know. I'm coming with you.
Whoa.
We're like, no, you're not.
Wow.
And he got in our van and drove across the border to Tijuana. We hung out all day. He took us all to dinner. It also just happened to be, it coincided with some kind of Christmas time biker Toys for Tots rally that apparently starts in Tijuana and goes to Vancouver or something. So we're all hanging out in Tijuana, just having the best time, buying wrestling masks and all that junk. And 10,000 Harley Davidsons go by. And I don't know if we used to have those T-shirts that on the back that said "fuck you." We're from Boston.
Yeah, I had one.
So I happen to have that T-shirt on, and Bowie's like, Lee, stand over there. So he pushed me out into the front of the sidewalk as the bikes are rolling by, and he's taking pictures. I'm just like, oh man, David Bowie's taking pictures of me. That was a good day.
Did you ever get a photo?
No, I should. And that's the other thing. It's a total double-edged sword that we didn't have iPhones there's lots of things I'm glad were not memorialized, but there are things that I wish we had taken pictures of, like us with Joe Strummer and.
Yeah, and that reminds me of the one photo that we all took together, and I kind of ruined it for you and stuck my head out, the Michael Douglas photo, and I feel bad every time I look at it.
This interview's over. I'm leaving.
I'm blocking Lee Harrington. It's just like, I don't know what happened in that photo.
That was a good day, too. That was
you were the highlight of that meeting because you were just wanted to talk about Kirk Douglas, and he was actually answering all your questions, and I thought that was fantastic.
That was one of those moments that I tend to forget about it sometimes in a way because of all the other things that we've experienced. But, sitting down, smoking butts and drinking vodka with Michael Douglas was pretty cool.
It was funny because he got this bar that we met at and the place was empty. It was like he must have told them, I don't want anyone to come here today. I'm going to meet this rock and roll band from Boston and we're going to hang out. And he hung out with us. And he had a couple of vodka and cranberries, was pounding them away.
I remember he also was just about to leave to go film Basic Instinct.
Yes.
And we were all like, oh, he's like, yeah, it's not a bad way to spend a few months, hanging out with Sharon Stone. Like,
that was good. I mean, I have some good memories. I mean, I remember hanging out with you guys in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. We had a riot up there. You guys played this radio festival thing or whatever. And we were walking all around the city. I got all these photos. Yeah. And then Dallas one time I hung out with you guys. We had a lot of fun down there.
Down Deep Ellum. That was fun.
Yeah. We've always, I mean, the neighborhoods will always be, part of my whole life. Everything I've done in the music business, the hoods are right, they're at the top of the list. Let's see what else I got here for you, Mr. Harrington. Oh, you know what I wanted to do? I wanted to do a word association thing with you. Okay. Because I've always wanted to do this, and I feel like I can do it with you because I know about all this shit too. Okay. And so you'll give me good answers. I'm going to say something, and you just give me a couple lines about what you think. But some of it we talked about. So the hard one.
I remember that Wayne Valdez took the record cover photos.
Fenway Park. We went there pre-game, sat in the bleachers, and Wayne took those pictures. And I remember thinking that was a good record. There was a bunch of really good songs in that record. I was really proud of that record. Yeah, Arrogance is probably still my favorite neighborhood song.
That's a brilliant song. It's one of the best songs Dave ever wrote.
Reptile Man.
I remember I had a song on the record. I think was Tommy on? Yeah.
Tommy.
Yeah, and
which we played earlier.
That might have been the first song that I.
Wailing Wall, wasn't it on that record?
Yep.
Yeah, you wrote that.
But before that, I had not considered myself a songwriter, and I was in a band with Dave, and that's a pretty intimidating prospect for.
You were the George Harrison.
Exactly, a burgeoning songwriter. And I have to say that, and I've said this to anybody who've ever had this conversation with, Dave was the most supportive, enthusiastic guy when it came to me presenting songs. He never was threatened or dismissive. It was great. He was always super excited about it. And I think it took some of the pressure off him maybe a little bit because it's hard. Everyone just looked at Dave like, what are we doing? Where are the songs? What's going on?
You're ruining my word association here because you're getting ahead of yourself. Okay. Mike Quaglia. Careful, Mike Quaglia.
Mike is the salt of the earth. Like a guy who would do anything for a friend, a great guy. He and I it's like a family. The dynamic in a band shifts from moment to moment and time period to time period. But so there were definitely times when Mike and I were super tight and we were the ones saying, Dave, come back to earth. Let's do this. Let's follow this path. Let's do this. Let's play She's So Good. Let's play Flavors. Like these songs are great. You can't just ignore that you wrote them. So I think Mike found
It's hard to believe he didn't want to play those songs.
But, you look back at the body of work that guy's produced. It's insane what a great songwriter he is.
Mike used to be a head counter, too. I remember when he would be at shows when they'd be counting the people. And he handled all the business and everything.
Mike's one of those guys, he could have done anything he set his mind to. He was so smart. And I don't think he ever really knew how smart he was. But he was a great guy. And he's still a great guy.
I got a good one for you.
Okay.
Carl Coletti. I'm sorry, man.
Sorry.
It's all right, man. It's all right. I know that we all took it really, really bad when Carl passed away. And
You think you're always going to have these people in your life. You just take it for granted. So that was a shocker. And he was an amazing guy, an incredible drummer. I mean, he transformed the band. And we recorded a bunch of songs with him that have still never seen the light of day that we have to get out. But yeah, great guy. He was a real shot in the arm in so many ways for that band.
Johnny Rock.
Johnny Rock's another guy like Careful Mike.
John Lynch. Johnny Rock Lynch.
John Lynch could, aside from being a phenomenal musician, John could be the CEO of any company in the world. He's focused, he's smart, he's fearless, and he saved us. Dave and I hadn't played together in over 10 years, and we didn't have an acrimonious ending of the band. It's like we just both thought this is what we're going to do, and Carl was leaving for the West Coast. So Dave and I were friends, but we didn't have texts and cell phones and stuff in 92, 95, so we'd bump into each other once in a while at things.
Yeah, you guys took a long break, actually.
Yeah. And when we played at a friend's birthday party, and John played drums, because I think John knew Dave from doing some session work. Mm-hmm. And John just sort of planted the seed, why don't we do a show? And I think Dave was hesitant, and I probably was busy and maybe hesitant, but John resurrected the band single-handedly and has kept us focused since then. He's aside from being a great friend and an amazing drummer, he's just like a force of nature. He's a great guy.
Dave Minahan.
Oh, geez. You thought Carl got me choked up.
I'm sorry about that, man.
I don't know what to say. I said at the outset of the show, I think he should be, or maybe when we were talking offline, he's Angus Young. He's Bowie. He's a rock star.
Are you surprised he became a famous producer and shit around town?
Looking back now, it's sort of hard to erase the path that he followed, but I think probably at the time I was, because I knew when we were in the studio, Dave was always much more focused on the process. Mike and I were like, where's the ashtray? Where's the beer? Am I done? Is that good enough? Dave was always the one who was like, what's that? Why are you turning that knob? He was always very process oriented. So I think that I'm not surprised he's a good producer, and he's also so deeply in love with music. And anyone that I know, and I've known tons of people who've worked with Dave, no one's ever had a better experience in the studio than to work with Dave and Wooly. He's not a knob turner. He's not a guy that turns the lights on and off. He's invested in the projects that he works on, and the results speak for themselves. He makes great records.
Changing the course a little here. The Channel, because I saw you guys there many times.
Yeah, Channel was probably one of the first club casualties, because it happened such a long time ago. Look, the Channel, I had so many wonderful personal musical experiences at the Channel, like seeing Echo and the Bunnymen and seeing so many great bands there, and playing there was always fun. Because
having Cheap Trick come on stage and play with you, I was there that night.
I mean, again, talk about getting to meet your heroes, like great moments, and we played a few shows with those guys too. It was awesome. So I love the Channel. There was some sketchy folks who worked there and ran the place, and I saw stuff there that I probably shouldn't talk about, because there's probably still people who would have you put in a dumpster somewhere.
Well, this could be even better. The Rat.
I mean, the Rat to me is the single most important venue for my musical pathway, because I went there, like I said, in '78 as a high school kid to see La Peste and the Hoods and the Atlantics and any number of bands that the Nervous Eaters. I mean, talk about a great Boston. I just saw these bands who were real people a foot away from me on a tiny stage in a dingy basement making brilliant music, and it became more real to me. It became something that wasn't just something that happened away from, in England somewhere, or in LA or New York somewhere. It's like it was happening in my hometown, and it was awe-inspiring.
When I had Mark Bell on the show, Cowboy Mark Bell from the Joe Perry Project, he told us the story about when they opened for the Runaways Thunder Train, and Bowie and Iggy Pop showed up at the Rat, and they all were hanging out up in one of those offices, Jim Harrell's office or whatever. Yeah. And, the Runaways were all like 16. And so a lot of great things have happened there.
I saw the Police at the Rat on a Sunday night with like 30 people in the room. It's crazy.
Yeah.
That was
What about the last Rat? Because I was at both of those shows, and that was incredible.
It was good. We had made the decision that we were going to sort of pull the plug, and we did a brief tour to sort of go to some of the places where we had sort of had loyal fans over the course of the career, and the Rat just seemed like the fitting place to put the nail in the coffin. And it was nice because it was a celebration. It wasn't a eulogy. It was tons of fun. We had lots of friends come up. Brad came up and played with us, and Mike came back and played with us, which was perfect.
John and Mike played with Dave. That was just.
So that was a good weekend.
I've never seen more people jammed into a place.
I heard you talking to Rick about this last week, that you used to go see bands at the Rat, and a band would play, then another band would play, then the first band would go back. They used to alternate sets, and maybe on a Thursday night someone would open, and the Friday the next band would open. It was just this weird organic community.
I miss that place.
Me too.
I got one for you. Last known address. we want to talk about that with you, but we'll do the word association first.
Sure. For me, it's the best sounding record we ever made. It sounds the most like us. And again, that's a tip of the cap to Dave, because Dave really took all of the raw material from the tracks and made that record come alive. I will also say that I co-wrote a song in the record with my daughter.
You did?
Which was just, the nice little legacy to have kids that are interested in music. And my oldest son played guitar on one of the tracks. So that's
wow.
And I have to say that the song that I wrote with my daughter is the song that gets the most airplay from that record. It's still getting airplay a year later.
Which track is that?
Don't Look Down.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I'm sorry we're not playing that on the show. I have a surprise at the end of the show, but that's not it.
Yeah, she came to me one day. She said, I wrote a song. And she started singing to me. I'm like, yeah, that's a good song. So
I'm going to just segue into that because that was my last thing. So I did play Bygone Era on a show a while back. It's fantastic. There's a lot of people that are talking about how long it took for that record to come out. When did you actually start working on that record, and did it really take a long time to come out, or did you do the whole thing in 2019?
No, it was an incredibly long, sort of disjointed process. We started tracking some of the songs when Woolly Mammoth was still down by Fenway Park. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And then Dave was sort of forced out of there when they decided to raise the place down. and built high rises.
This New Alliance building was originally the New Alliance building.
Yeah.
1312 Boylston.
So we started tracking it, and then people have jobs and lives and families, and
so years.
Yeah. And then Dave and I both started writing again, and wrote a bunch of songs. And we were playing gigs, so we were sort of gigging the songs and getting ready. And then when we had time, we'd go in and track. And again, credit to John Lynch for keeping us focused as best he could, trying to wrangle two geezers who don't have all their brain cells left. But yeah, it took a long time to do, which is another amazing tribute to Dave, that it sounds cohesive. He took all these disparate performances and really made a great record out of it. Yeah,
like I said, I was very, very impressed. I just got the record recently, so I'm still listening to it. So do you think that once this whole mess that we're in the middle of now is over, that the Hoods will actually play some shows?
That's a good question, and we talk about it. We had gigs lined up in April and May. Which of course
a tour?
No, we were going to start just playing some local shows, and then we thought about, would we go to LA? Would we go down to DC and New York, and maybe go back to some of the old haunts just for old time's sake? And I think we may have done that. I think we would have done that. We'll see what happens when this. First of all, we'll see when it ends. If we're talking about gigs in May of next year, maybe. If we're talking about gigs in December of 2022 or something, I don't. Dave and I are. We have our vanity. We we want to die young and leave pretty corpses.
Well, it was good that Dave got to do the Replacements thing because
awesome.
it kind of got his name out there more. And I think if the Hoods ever went on tour, people would be there.
Yeah.
So you guys toured with Tin Machine, the Ramones, shared the stage with Cheap Trick many times. Of course, the show in Foxborough. When you look back at all these moments, is there like, I know, it's hard to not say the Bowie show, but is there something we might have missed here? I know we've covered a lot that sticks out in your mind about those bands. And I know Tommy Ramone, I was in the same dressing room with him a few times at neighborhood shows.
Oh, yeah.
He was a fan of the band.
Yeah, there was a period in time we were talking to Tommy about producing the Hoods. It might have even been, if it wasn't High Hard One, it was maybe Reptile Men, and it never connected for whatever reason. But yeah, I look back now and I play with the Ramones, play with the Clash. We play with the
Clash.
We play with the Damned. We played, I play with the open for the Stranglers, and we play with Mission to Burma, and we play with Bowie and Cheap Trick. We've worked with Aerosmith. I shared a stage with Brad Delp from Boston. We play with Iggy. We play with Joe Perry. I saw Brad Whitford did a show at the Wilbur a few years ago, and this tall blonde guy comes walking over to me. He's like, "Hey, Lee." I'm like, "Hey, it was Tom Hamilton from Aerosmith." I'm like, I hadn't seen Tom in 15 years, and he's like, Tom Hamilton knows who I am. It's like,
Didn't he jam with you guys at the Last Rat too?
Yep.
Yeah.
So he's a great guy. So yeah, it's hard to pick a favorite moment, and
Tyler showed up at a show in Pittsburgh once.
Tyler got up on stage and sang a couple songs with us in Pittsburgh. Yeah, that was.
People still talk about that there.
Yeah. So lots of amazing highlights, and honestly, working with Dave all these years has just been a gift. I mean, as I said, I started as a fan. There's part of me that always remains a fan, even though we are friends and brothers and colleagues. But sharing the stage and sharing those experiences with someone that you're friends with, like that. I have no regrets. It's pretty nice.
I saw you guys so many times that I'm having all these flashbacks.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us about some of your other projects that you're doing musically?
Okay. I did this one-off thing last year with a bunch of guys, including, as I said, Billy Lucidian from Willie's band. We did a Mott the Hoople tribute show at the Lizard Lounge, which was a ton of fun. I'm a huge Mott fan. And through that and through sort of, past connections as friends with Jen Dangora from Jenny D and Dan Kopko from Watts. Right. They were putting a project together, and they had written some songs together, and they were looking for a band, and they asked me if I'd be interested. And because the Hoods were not playing at the time, the record had just kind of come out, we weren't sure what we were going to do. I was like, sure, I have time, and I respect them both as performers, and they're great songwriters. I mean, just crazy good songwriters. So we've recorded about 4 or 5 songs now. There's probably 10 or 12 tracks that we can finish. Was
Ed V involved in that too?
Ed does do some of the tracking. Because of COVID, we've all tracked in. Like I tracked at Wooly. Dan tracks sometimes at home because he's got Pro Tools. The drummer tracked at not a Q Division, but no, because that's what Jen. But so we sort of, it's been a amalgamation of very disparate performances, but it sounds great. And we put out a video and a single recently.
I gotta check that out. I'm sorry,
it's
I haven't.
Super catchy. And again, you do this now purely for the love of music and the camaraderie and getting to work with people that you respect, and then you get a little ego boost because people like your song. So it's not a bad way to go about it.
Wow. Well, we covered a lot. That's what I was hoping to do. But I want to thank you. Means a lot to me, man, that
right back
you're
at you,
here
Steve.
Today, man. I've always had a lot of respect for you, and we worked together for a long time.
That's great.
And I have nothing but fantastic memories. I'm sorry that I got you a little sad there for a second,
No.
but I think it's a good thing
Yep.
that we're remembering somebody that was a great guy.
Yep.
And thank you for coming on the
Thank you for inviting me,
Smoke.
Steve. It was a blast.
My pleasure, man. 100%. Maybe again sometime
Sure.
if you want to come back.
Yep.
Stay tuned. Next week, we're going to have Al Quint, one of the best music writers in America, on the show. And I just want to remind you how important it is that we support the mom and pops and independent shops out there like Baby Loves Tacos, who we mentioned in the beginning of the show, along with JLS Design in Leicester, Moonbeam Cafe in Oakmont, PA, Spectacle Eyewear in Boston, the Dark Horse Pub right down the road here in Somerville, Honest Taqueria, also a Boston establishment, the Record Archive in Rochester, and the 1369 Coffee Shop in Inman Square, Cambridge, where I got myself a lovely iced tea with extra lemon this morning. These fine establishments need us now more than ever during these difficult times. So whether it's, to get takeout food or order merch or buy your favorite metal band's new release, please keep these small businesses in mind. Before leaving, we want to thank our engineer, Nick Z, here at New Alliance East in Somerville, and also our patrons who continually support the podcast on patreon.com. That's patreon.com/Twisted Rico. I'd love to have you on board for that if you want to help. You can reach me at twistedrico@gmail.com. Follow the Instagram page at Twisted Rico. We're on Twitter at Blowing Smoke BS, and there's also a Blowing Smoke with Twisted Rico Facebook page. We're going to do something different here today that I've never done before in our previous 57 shows. We're going to end the show with a different song. I want to leave you with one of my favorite songs by the Neighborhoods, written by Lee Harrington. This one's called Love Holiday. This is Blowing Smoke with Twisted Rico. I'm your host, Steve Ricardo. Till the next time we say goodbye, keep the rock and roll alive. We love you, Busy Phillips, and we're going to take you on a love holiday.
All alone on a holiday, a trip so far from here, waiting for your answer. Come along and dance with me, my dear. Yesterday's behind us now, like the candle time for bed. Wrap your coat around me. Aren't you glad you found me? Well, I know, and yes I know, only come along if you wanna go. Well, I say, yes I say, come with me on a holiday. Well, I know, yes I know, only come along if you wanna go. Yeah, well I say, yes I say, come with me on a holiday. When the night is over, child, time will blow the night away. Laying here with me, don't you ever see? Well, I know, yes I know, only come along if you wanna go. Yeah, well I say, yes I say, come with me on a holiday. Well, I know, yes I
Didn't even talk about the fact that I appeared before the Supreme Court.
You did?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. When?
About a year and a half ago. I totally...
Thanks for telling me.
Sorry. I forgot.